It was supposed to be just another blind date, one of those setups that friends insist will change your life. But as the minutes ticked by and the restaurant filled with laughter and clinking glasses, Ethan sat alone at a corner table staring at the single red rose in the vase. He checked his watch again. 45 minutes late. The candle between him and the empty chair had melted halfway down. The waiter gave him that polite, pitying smile, the kind you give to someone who's been stood up. He sighed, stirring his untouched coffee. Maybe she's not coming, he muttered under his breath, trying to sound indifferent, but the disappointment in his chest was heavy. He had promised himself he wouldn't do this again. He wouldn't let hope embarrass him. Not after his last heartbreak, not after spending years rebuilding the pieces of his trust. But somehow he'd let his friend convince him. She's perfect for you, Ethan. Just give it one more try. And now here he was, alone again. He pulled out his wallet to pay for the untouched coffee and leave quietly. But just as he stood up, a tiny voice cut through the murmur of the restaurant. "Excuse me, mister?" Ethan turned, surprised. A little girl stood by his table, no older than 6 or 7, holding a small pink bag and a teddy bear missing an eye. She had curly brown hair and wide, innocent eyes that didn't seem to match the chaos of the adult world around her. "My mommy's sorry she's late," she said, her voice soft but serious, as if she was on a very important mission. "She told me to tell you to wait just 5 more minutes." Ethan blinked. "Your mommy?" The girl nodded eagerly. "Yes. Her car broke down, but she said you look just like your picture, so I found you." He couldn't help but laugh, a short, stunned sound that made the little girl smile. Everyone around them was watching now, curious and charmed by the strange scene. Ethan knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Well, thank you for telling me." "That's very brave of you," the girl grinned. "Mommy says being late doesn't mean you don't care. It means life just got a little messy." Ethan smiled at that. "Smart mommy you've got," she nodded proudly. "She's the smartest person in the world, even when she cries sometimes." Before Ethan could ask more, the door to the restaurant swung open, and a woman rushed in, her hair wine-tossed, her cheeks flushed, her expression somewhere between panic and apology. She spotted them instantly and hurried over. "I'm so sorry," she said, slightly breathless. "My car died, and then the tow truck took forever, and—" She stopped mid-sentence when her eyes met Ethan's. Her words faltered. For a moment, the noise of the restaurant faded. Her name was Clara, and something in her tired, kind eyes made the world slow down. "It's okay," Ethan said softly. "Your messenger already saved the day." Clara glanced down at her daughter, who was now proudly sipping a glass of water as if she'd completed a royal mission. "Of course she did," she said with a small, grateful smile. "She's my little hero." As they sat down, awkwardness gave way to laughter. The conversation that followed wasn't perfect. It was real. Clara spoke about raising her daughter alone, about losing her husband in a car accident 3 years ago, about learning how to smile again. Ethan shared his story too, his failed engagement, the loneliness that came after, and how he'd almost given up on love entirely. They talked until the restaurant emptied, until the staff began stacking chairs, and even then, neither wanted to leave. The little girl had fallen asleep against Clara's shoulder, her teddy bear resting on Ethan's jacket. When Ethan offered to drive them home, Clara hesitated. "You don't have to," she said softly. "I want to," he replied. The car ride was quiet but warm. At her apartment, Ethan helped carry the sleeping girl inside. He tucked the teddy bear beside her and smiled at how peaceful she looked. Clara stood in the doorway, her eyes soft. "She really likes you," she whispered. "I like her too," Ethan said. Then, after a pause, "And her mom?" That made her laugh, a quiet, heartfelt sound that filled the silence between them. "Maybe next time," she said. "I'll be on time." "Next time," he promised. Weeks passed. What started as an awkward blind date turned into long walks, laughter over takeout dinners, and bedtime stories shared between 3 hearts that slowly began to fit together. Clara's daughter, Lily, took to calling Ethan Mr. Pancake because he made breakfast on Saturdays and always burned the first one. But it wasn't perfect. There were moments Clara pulled away, moments when grief resurfaced and fear whispered that she shouldn't move on. Ethan, too, struggled with doubts, wondering if he could ever truly be part of a family again. One evening, after an argument about something small but painful, Ethan had forgotten to pick up Lily from school. Clara sat by the window, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared," she whispered when he came to sit beside her. "I'm scared to love you. What if I lose you too?" Ethan took her hand, his voice steady but tender. "Then we'll love each other anyway. Because being scared means it's real, and real things are always worth it." She looked at him, and in that moment, the walls between them quietly crumbled. Months later, Ethan found himself back in that same restaurant, the one where it all began. Only this time, the table wasn't empty. Across from him sat Clara, smiling shyly, and beside her was Lily, proudly holding a small red rose. "Mommy said this is where your heart started working again," Lily announced. Ethan laughed, tears stinging his eyes. "She's right." As the three of them raised their glasses, the waiter approached and smiled knowingly. "Good to see this table full again," he said warmly. Ethan looked at Clara and Lily, the two people who had turned his quiet, lonely world into something alive again, and smiled. "It's more than full," he said softly. "It's complete." And as the candle flickered between them, the restaurant lights glowed like stars. And the story that began with an empty chair ended with a family, born not from perfection, but from second chances, courage, and the kind of love that arrives when you almost stop believing it ever will.